Mm. Good moment, everybody. And a really warm welcome to the Community Meditation Center. My name is Bard Van Malik. I am CMC's guiding teacher. And with us today is Joseph Goldstein, zooming in all the way from Barre, Massachusetts. And I'm so glad Joseph is with us today. And it's a special session where you can reflect on some questions that you might have about your meditation or the Dharma. And Joseph is so generous in offering his time today to answer those. And before moving into that section, as most of you know, we always start first with a guided meditation. But we have two little rituals before, and that the first one is to maybe switch on your video and click on gallery view. And Debbie's already doing it. Yay, just start waving and just giving everyone a wave. And also those on the phone, please know you're being waved at, or those who are like, no, I don't want to put on the video. And as you're waving and maybe leaning forward a little bit onto your device, maybe click chat and just maybe share where you are zooming in from. I am sending you lots of love and kindness from Central Harlem, but we have people coming in from Rye, New York, Staten Island, Syracuse, Miami, Florida, Brooklyn. Oh, it goes so fast. Oh my. Oh, it's too difficult for me to keep up with this. I see someone from Brad from Queens, Sheila from Brooklyn, Jane from the Upper West Side, and Rachel greeting us from Riverdale, the Boogie Down Bronx. So I want to welcome you all so much to our special session and want to thank you, dear Joseph, for taking the time to be with us. And I will gladly hand it over to you.
Hello, everyone. It's really good to be with you all. Um, yeah, as Bart said, we'll begin with about half an hour of a guided meditation. So if you take a meditation posture, whatever that may be for you, in whatever posture you are, to the extent that you can settle into a relaxed and alert posture, uh, that's reasonably comfortable so you can stay fairly still. So often we begin the meditation um, becoming aware of the breath. And I just like to highlight two different ways we can be with the breath. Typically, it's taught that we settle into the awareness of the body and then narrow the attention to where we feel the breath most clearly. So narrowing the attention, for example, to the tip of the nose, feeling the air passing the nostrils or the upper lip. Or maybe it's the movement of the chest or the abdomen. So one way, it's like a zoom lens. We're zooming in to the specific area of the breath. And then practicing staying steady with the natural flow of the breath. So we're not forcing it, we're not interfering with it, we're letting it appear just as it does. The other way of being with the breath is not so much the zoom lens, but a wide angle lens. What that means is that we settle into we settle into the awareness of our whole body posture. So it's a whole body awareness. And then keeping that larger frame of being aware of the whole body, we simply are aware of the sensations of the body breathing within that larger frame. So we're not necessarily narrowing the attention. We're just aware of the breath within the frame of the whole body. Sometimes people find that helpful as a way of uh, freeing the mind from the habit of controlling the breath, even in subtle ways. So you could experiment with both of those and even interweave them in the course of the sitting. Um, but I think it's helpful just to become familiar with these two possibilities with regard to mindfulness of breathing. Okay, settling in. Maybe take a few deep breaths just to settle into the body. And then either narrowing the attention to where you feel the breath or keeping the more wide angle focus. And you can experiment a little bit so you become familiar with these two ways. Keep in mind that the body knows how to breathe by itself. So we can relax and let each breath appear in whatever way it does, without controlling it, without trying to make it a certain way. Sometimes the breath is long, sometimes short, sometimes smooth, sometimes rough. Simply to be mindful of however it appears. When different bodily sensations become predominant, call your attention away from the breathing. Open to the feeling of those sensations. They become the new object of awareness. And some of the sensations may be pleasant, some unpleasant. Simply to be mindful of them. And notice how the sensations are changing, getting stronger or weaker, seeming to shift position. And when they're no longer calling your attention, again, returning to the feeling of the body breathing. Stay particularly alert for the appearance of thoughts or images in the mind. See how quickly you can become aware of them as they arise. And you might notice when in the thought process you do become aware. Is it after the thought is already over and we remember? Do we become mindful in the middle of a thought? Occasionally, can we become mindful of a thought or image just as they arise? So simply to notice without judgment. Particularly with thoughts and images, it's often helpful to make a soft mental acknowledgement, a soft mental note of thinking or seeing if it's an image, because they often slip in unnoticed. And that soft acknowledgement, thinking, seeing, helps to strengthen the mindfulness of them. Connecting with the sensations of the body breathing, mindful of other predominant sensations in the body, and alert for the appearance and arising of thoughts or images in the mind, noticing how they're all changing, arising and passing away. And become mindful of your general mind state. Is the mind calm? Is it restless? Is there the quality of interest? Is the mind getting bored? Whatever mind state or emotion is arising should also be made the object of mindfulness of awareness, seeing that those mind states and emotions are also impermanent, arising, passing away. And in the last minute or two, settle into the feeling of the breath, calming the mind with the breath, steadying the mind on the breath.
Thank you for your guidance, Joseph. I'd like to offer a few words on generosity before moving into our question and response session with Joseph. Maybe just take some time to see how the body is, if it needs to some adjustment, some stretching, some hydrating, as an act of generosity to yourself. And I just want to start by sharing that for 5 years and 10 days exactly, I've been serving as CMC's guiding teacher now. And it's been so inspirational. It's been so wonderful to have sometimes guest teachers like Joseph holding the fort, But, your continued presence has really given me a lot of support to keep on practicing the Dharma and studying it and then sharing it as best as I can. And I just want to thank you for keep showing up. So many of you keep showing up Sunday after Sunday. Even when we do an in-person hybrid, a lot of the local New Yorkers show up. Our Thursdays, Inside Dialogue once a month. And it's been such a pleasure to receive your presence and being able to share the Dharma and so many wonderful teachers with you all. And as some of you know, we completely run on your presence, your volunteering, and your financial contributions. And that to me is also highly inspiring that we can do this and that we can keep offering the teachings and the teachers and the whole community freely. And if you can and want to, you can make a contribution, which I'll share ways to do so in the chat. And we recently also have started sending out emails when you can revisit the talk of that particular Sunday with more information, how you can support CMC. And so just a deep thank you for your continued practice and your support of Community Meditation Center. And so I just want to welcome a pause right now and kind of suggest maybe a few things that might support your mind in coming up with a question that you might want to share with Joseph. What arises if you kind of hold in the mind what's happening in your meditation practice these days? Where might you feel inspired or uncertain or stuck? I know that you'll be generous in your deep listening, but for those who want to share their questions in the chat, know you're generous in that way too, and I will read those to Joseph. I just want to give you some time to reflect, noticing if you can still feel the body. Be mindful as you reflect. And one thing that came to my mind, Joseph, that I want to start with as a question, it's inspired by our theme. So at CMC, we always have a theme, and these few months, we've been reflecting the teachings of the 10 Pāramīs, 10 human qualities the Buddha had perfected. And we're looking at one each week. And this week is about effort. And it made me think of this monk, Sona, who was doing a lot of walking meditation practice to the extent that he had blisters on his feet. But all of a sudden, this thought occurred to him that he was saying to himself, of all the monks here, I'm not the one who doesn't have a lot of effort. Why am I not freed from these powerful kilesas, these defilements that keep kind of ruminating in my mind? And then he had this thought where he goes, I come from a wealthy family. Maybe I should just disrobe and enjoy all these worldly pleasures again. And it said that in the text, then the Buddha magically appeared in front of him. And I must say, Joseph, that sometimes when I feel a little slacky in my practice, you come to my mind. But anyway, that's a whole other story. So, and then Sona all of a sudden has the Buddha appearing in front of him, and the Buddha remembered that Sona used to be a lute player, a guitar player. And so he's asking Sona, when your strings are too loose, how does your guitar sound? And likewise, when they're too tight. And he says, they're not playable, Venerable Sir. And then the Buddha suggested, well, what happens when they are tuned and just the right pitch? Is your lute playable? And he says, yes, Venerable Sir. The Buddha used that analogy to kind of notice when we're either too slack or too tight in our practice. And so I was wondering, Joseph, in your years of practice, have you had moments where either you felt too tight in your practicing, like Sona, or too slack? And what did you do so that, you might inspire us in how you hold that?
Absolutely. I think everybody goes through that exploration of what right effort means. Uh, because just like with a lute or a guitar or any stringed instrument, it's not as if we find the right balance and then it just stays there. It needs continual retuning, right? And so keeping an eye out for the quality of our effort is really important. So I'll just share a few of the things that really have helped me a lot. Uh, One has to do with our understanding of what concentration is and how one practices it. Because as most of you know, concentration, samadhi, is fundamental to quieting the mind, to seeing in a deeper kind of way. But in English, the word concentration has all kinds of connotations which are not that helpful, because when we think of concentration, we often associate it with a kind of tense focusing on the mind, focusing of the mind, and uh, that's an example of too much effort. We're trying to hold on to the objects. I found that another word which describes the actual mind state of concentration, but uses a different word with a more helpful connotation, uh, is the word steadiness. So when we're feeling the breath and we're concentrating on the breath, instead of kind of that tense, heavy focusing, and we can feel the kind of tension in that when we're trying to do that, and it often gets a little exhausting. If we think of it instead of, okay, we're feeling the breath, just stay steady, steady on the in-breath, steady on the out-breath. And the example, the image that the Buddha used to describe this quality of steadiness is that of a candle flame in a windless place where there's no wind causing the flame to flicker. The flame is just steady. Can we make our minds, or can we conjure up that image to remind us that it's not about an over-efforting to be concentrated, it's just staying steady. And we remind ourselves, it's soft. Along with that, there's a phrase that I often use um, in encouraging people to be mindful throughout the day, is to be relaxed but not casual. So what I mean by casual is a mind state where we're more or less mindful. We're kind of there, but not really there, not fully there. So we don't want to be casual. We don't want to be in that more or less mindful state, whether it's in a sitting or just moving about. At the same time, we don't want to be casual, but we do want to stay relaxed. So relaxed means coming in closer to the object. That's not casual, but without forcing, with just that quality of openness, of steadiness, of ease. Um, and right there is the balance of tuning the strings of the lute. Right? We're relaxed and not casual. So one example of this that came up in my own practice, I was studying, practicing with my teacher Sayadaw U Pandita. This was on a retreat in Nepal. Um, and he's quite a demanding, he was a quite a demanding teacher. Um, and the conditions of the retreat were really not very good, not like IMS at all, right? The food wasn't good and the accommodations weren't good, and we were just sleeping, on kind of whatever pad we had brought on a cement floor. Uh, and so my mind was grumbling a lot, about the conditions. So I go into I'll report my experience and tell him what my mind is doing. And all he said to me was, be more mindful. And my first thought in my mind, I didn't say it, was, thanks a lot. Right? I expected some sympathy for having to practice, in these really poor conditions. And all he said was, be more mindful. So I went outside, started doing walking meditation. And I thought, okay, this was the great master. He said, be more mindful. Let me try it. And so instead of that more or less mindful, when I might have been doing the walking, but all the time thinking about the poor conditions, I brought my mind in very close to the feeling of the sensations of the movement. Right? And it was that closeness of connection in a relaxed way. It didn't take force. It just took the intention to feel it closely. And it was somewhat miraculous. As my mind felt the sensations of the steps very closely, there was no room for all that rumination about the conditions and, the difficulties. The mind became very quiet, it became very still, it became very steady. And so that very simple instruction, be more mindful, if it's understood in the right way, not forcing, not tightening, relaxed but not casual. I think that's some of the keys to finding this place of right effort.
Thank you, Joseph. Just pausing for a moment, letting those words settle, and also giving you some space if there is a question that you might want to share. Just want to ask one more question about this particular topic of effort as more people are reflecting on it, Joseph. And this one is coming from Veronica, who writes, for a long time, I've been unhappy with my lack of determination to really practice every day regularly. I wonder what might help to develop this effort, although I have enough experience that the Dharma is my bedrock and my orientation in life.
Yes. So I have the perfect solution to this problem. And it came years ago. There was a meditator up at a retreat in IMS, and they were from New York and basically expressing the same thing. They just had they were really committed to the practice, but had a hard time sustaining the regular practice. And what they discovered was they made the commitment to at least get into the meditative posture once a day. That's all. No time, not to sit for an hour a day, whatever one's hope might be. Just get into the posture. Just as a side note here, um, as part of my attempt to stay healthy, I'm working with a trainer, and he's become interested in meditation. So, I give him a little instruction in meditation. Uh, and he started using so I'll ask him how it's going. And he's been using the phrase, oh, yesterday I postured up for 15 minutes. So posturing up. So make the commitment to posture up. Just get into the position because what I found with so many things, even with doing these training, physical exercise, the hardest part is just starting it. It's breaking the momentum of whatever we've been doing. Oh, I don't feel like it. I'm a little tired. Or all these kind of ruminations in the mind. But as soon as we break the momentum of that and posture up or begin to exercise, whatever it may be, then it's easy. I almost guaranteed if you make this commitment, you will sit longer than a minute because the difficulty is getting into the posture. And once you're there, you'll sit as long as you sit, and over time, when you really come to appreciate that and you follow this commitment to at least posture up once a day, then over time, and you see that that actually works to sit for some time, then you could make an aspiration for how long you want to sit. But I would start without any time frame at all, just to get into the habit of getting into the posture and seeing what happens. Um, I think it's been very effective, for me and sharing this with a lot of people. Um, so I'd be interested if any of you do try this, for those of you who may be having a hard time establishing a regular daily practice, uh, let Bart know how it goes, and then he can let me know. I'd
Yes.
be I'd be interested in getting feedback on this particular suggestion.
Oh.
So posture up, folks.
Oh, and Joseph, I also posture up when I do walking.
Yes, same
Someone asked
thing.
about walking practice in the chat too, like, how to mix those two. And I really, before I do my walking practice, I posture up too. And I go body like mountain. And I just stand and then just not immediately go walking, but just standing for a while is another way for me to
Yes.
posture up.
Yes, exactly. Posturing up can be any meditative posture.
Right.
Yeah. Even lying down, for some people, maybe at
No,
different times for a variety of reasons, may have to do lying meditation, but can lie down with that intention.
no.
Okay, I'm going to just be mindful now. Yeah.
I have a very specific lying down posture where I'm on my back and put my hands right here and the thumbs touch.
Mm.
And my body actually remembers, oh yeah, mine, this is not sleeping. I call it noble resting time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a different kind of way that you send a signal out that, oh yeah, mindfulness. Can I invite it in? Yeah. So maybe just pausing and let's posture up for a moment and taking some time if there's any questions. And I'm aware of so many beautiful questions, and I will always pass them on to other teachers and use them for my own study. But this next one that I'd love to share with you, Joseph, is from Amy. And Amy writes, like so many others, my family has experienced much suffering and loss. And as a result, I find myself hypersensitive to life's frailty. Are there teachings or advice you can offer to help with these feelings of worry, of anxiety, and vulnerability? I struggle with finding equanimity amidst the fear of more loss. Thank you.
Okay, so this is really a question that I think can touch a lot of people quite deeply.
Yeah.
And there's a profound Dharma understanding that can arise out of that question. So a couple of things come to mind. One is I came across a definition of dukkha. That's the Pali word, often translated as suffering. but it really means just the basic ultimately unsatisfying nature of everything that's impermanent, right? Unsatisfying in the sense of bringing us to a sense of lasting peace or fulfillment, precisely because nothing is lasting. So the definition, and I came across this online. It was quite surprising. I don't even quite remember, where what I was looking at. But the definition of dukkha, which is the first noble truth, the inevitability of unwanted experiences. And I love that. It just to me summed up this bedrock foundational understanding in Buddhism, right? The inevitability of unwanted experiences. That this is just the nature of things. This is the Dharma. Dharma means nature, or the law of things. And given the truth of change, pleasant becomes unpleasant, unpleasant then becomes pleasant, and just continually changing in a whole variety of circumstances. The reason I find this so helpful is because it reframes our relationship to things like loss, which is inevitable. Loss is just another word for change, right? Only change that we don't like, right? Change when it's going in what we think is the wrong direction. But this is the nature of life. This is the nature of the Dharma, the inevitability of this. So when we can really let that in, I think it can help bring about a kind of equanimity. So we're not thinking of it as a mistake, as somehow an aberration of natural law. It's part of life. So seeing it in that way, uh, I think can be really helpful. So that's one reframing. Then it's really interesting to really become mindful of one's own emotional response to this truth of change, this truth of loss. Okay? Do we see it as part of the natural order of things? And the natural order of things does not imply that things will always be pleasant in our lives. The natural order of things is that things arise and change and pass, and there's an inevitability of unwanted experiences. So until we come to fully accept that, and even come to a place of ease with it, understanding, yes, this is just the nature of things, we may well find our mind, our hearts, in some kind of emotional reaction. We don't like it, because it's painful, it's unpleasant. It's not to say that simply because we understand this is the nature of things that everything becomes pleasant. No, it's still the inevitability of unwanted experiences. But it's really important to then investigate the quality of our heart, the emotional quality of our response to it. Do we get lost in grief, and really drowning in it rather than it being the simple acknowledgement of loss? Do we deny it, or push it away or not want to deal with it and, find lots of ways for not relating to this particular aspect of our experience? So we want to really become quite investigative and open and interested in our own emotional response. so that we become mindful of them. And if they're not helpful, if they're just increasing the suffering for us, can we become mindful enough so that we're not quite as identified with them? They become another object of our meditation. Maybe it is overwhelming grief or sadness, or could be anything depending on our conditioning. Highlight the emotion. And there's a phrase many of you probably have heard me say over the years because I use it a lot in teaching, but it's been very helpful for me in my own practice. And the phrase is, don't waste your suffering, right? So in the face of unwanted experiences, if the heart, the mind is suffering, don't waste it. Don't be drowning in it. Don't push it away. Really investigate what is the cause of this suffering in the mind, in the heart. So this investigation both is tremendously helpful and extremely interesting. So just as an example, when I'm going along, and it could be big things, but it could also be just mild mild distress or unease about something or other. Now, for the most part, it's not perfect, but for the most part, when I'm feeling that, it will pique my interest. Okay, Joseph, what is going on? How am I relating to what's ever happening that's the cause of suffering? Because we tend often to think that the suffering is caused by the external situation. And it could be loss of someone, it could be anything, a difficult work situation, difficult interpersonal situation. This is a little sidebar. About 10,000 years ago, I was in a relationship and we were having we were having this little argument, and my friend turned to me and she said, "Stop making me feel aversion." And I started to laugh, which was not a wise move in the moment. Uh, but it just struck me as being quite funny. So it's true that conditions may be the cause of difficult emotions to arise, but how we relate to them is 100% up to us. Nobody makes us relate to difficult emotions in a particular way. That is totally up to us and the product of what we practiced. So don't waste your suffering means when there is this unease, take a look. What is going on in the mind in terms of how you're relating to whatever the situation is, right? Is there aversion to it? Is there a pushing away? Is there a contraction? That's the investigation, which can really lead to a place of greater peace in the face of the inevitability of unwanted experiences. That's just what's going to happen. That's the nature of things. How we relate to them will determine whether we're living with a quality of peace and freedom, or we're relating to them in a way that just causes us more suffering. So this actually is the second factor of enlightenment, investigation of the Dhammas, investigation of what the cause of suffering is for us. And just to say, this investigation, you don't have to be sitting. And the investigation could happen in formal meditation practice, but it could just be whatever you're doing in the day. If you really feel caught by the suffering, just keep looking, keep exploring, keep taking interest in it.
Thank you, Joseph. That last piece, what you were talking about, the investigation, is something that Elizabeth is also inquiring about. This is what she wrote to us. She asked, please comment on the role of inquiry in meditation practice. Like getting to know your mind includes the truth of impermanence or the condition of mind, like restlessness, emotions, etc. But how does inquiry fit in beyond these instructions, or doesn't it? I think here the question is interesting, like how to use this inquiring, investigative awakening factor.
Okay, I'll give an example.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so it's just one very specific example of a very particular mind state, but maybe you can extrapolate from it what the quality of investigation might be like. So a common hindrance that arises in practice is sleepiness. Sleepiness, dullness, uh, where we're sitting and we're just, nodding off, nodding off. Okay, so I think many of you, maybe most of you, have heard of our teacher Deepa Ma. This extraordinary, extraordinary woman uh, from India, Bengal. My first teacher, Munindraji, was her teacher, and she just developed in the most extraordinary ways. So she came to visit the States a couple of times, and before one of the 3-month retreats we do here at IMS, a group of teachers was sitting with Deepa Ma for 1 week. So she was kind of guiding this week-long retreat. And the instructions she gave us, not so much the specific meditation instructions, but what she said was, just sleep 3 hours a night. Don't lie down during the day. But if you fall asleep when you're sitting, never mind. So that was interesting. So 3 hours a night, not lying down during the day, there was a lot of sleepiness in the meditation and nodding off and. But because she said, if you fall asleep when you're sitting, never mind, just that changed the relationship in my mind to the sleepiness. Because before that, whenever I would feel sleepy, it would be this big struggle, a struggle to stay awake and to be alert. And so there was a lot of efforting in that. Because she said, never mind, if you fall asleep when you're sitting, my mind relaxed in the experience of it. And then something quite unexpected happened because my mind had stopped fighting with it and just relaxed into the experience of the sleepiness. My mind came out of it to a place of alertness much quicker. And I realized that it was the fighting with it that was actually making me more tired, more sleepy. So it was that relaxation that came from this investigation. What's the relationship of the mind to, to the sleepiness? And then as I did all that and just relaxed, I discovered something else through the investigation. When I stopped fighting with that mind state and just relaxed and aware of what it felt like, I saw that one might say embedded in the sleepiness was a feeling of calm. And we know this because When the mind's sleepy, it's not restless. It's not agitated. It's going in the direction actually of calm and concentration, but without quite enough energy to be alert. So when I began to get friendlier with the sleepiness and saw the calm within it, then I started just pulling on that thread of calm. So then I emphasized the calm aspect. And so then the practice got very easeful. I stopped fighting with the sleepiness. It actually let me become more wakeful quicker. I explored how calm was a part of it, then focused on the calm. So this is just one example. It's one very specific example around a particular mind state. But that's the quality of investigation, of seeing how we're relating to experience. Are we fighting with it? Are we open to it? Are we relaxed? Are we tense? That's the investigation, and then seeing, okay, in all of that, can we highlight those qualities that bring us to a place of balance, which is acceptance, which is openness, which is interest. Um, so I hope this gives some indication of what investigation means. And sometimes it's just by asking the question, if we're in a state of some kind of suffering or unease, sometimes, we might be sitting and just pose the question, well, what's happening now? What's going on? So instead of just, overriding it with whatever method we may be using in our meditation, no, we just take a step back and kind of open up to the whole experience. Okay, what is this? What's happening? What's the cause of suffering? We pose those questions, and then it allows us to see more clearly.
Thank you, Joseph. You could just notice if there's a question you could pose right now to just stay present and just checking in with your body. I'd love to share a question from Vin Joseph, who is asking, how can we detach our meditation from the expectation of becoming more mindful or a quote unquote better person?
Well, there's one distinction which I've talked about a lot. Perhaps many of you heard me talk about it, uh, but it's kind of a critical distinction, and that is really understanding the difference between expectation and aspiration. Right? Because an aspiration is some quality that we want to develop, that we understand as being valuable and helpful to ourselves, to others. So we could have an aspiration for being more loving or more compassionate or more mindful or a better person. I mean, it's good to become a better person, which means letting go of the things in ourselves that cause suffering to ourselves and other people, right? So these aspirations are really helpful because they set the direction for our practice. If we have the aspiration, for example, to be more compassionate, and we really reflect on that, then it'll incline us to looking for ways that we can be of help to others, right? When others are in some kind of difficulty, challenging situation, if compassion is our aspiration, then we see that as an opportunity. Oh, let me practice that here. How can I help? So having aspiration, and the aspiration could be for enlightenment, for awakening. The Munindraji, my first teacher, he said something early on in terms of aspiration. You should aim for the highest, full enlightenment, because if we aim for the highest, all other skillful qualities, all other kinds of happiness will come along, right? So don't sell yourself short about what your aspirations may be. Let's go for the big one. Let me become awakened. Uh, and we might want to highlight a few ones, that are a little short of that full awakening. Okay, that's aspiration. Really helpful, sets the direction. Expectation is a setup for suffering. Because what expectation means is that we want things to be the way we want them to be when we want them to be that way, right? So go into a sitting, if you have an expectation, okay, I'm going to be mindful for this whole hour. It's unlikely that that expectation will be fulfilled. Uh, Maybe on a good day, it'll approach it. But if the expectation is strong and then our experience doesn't meet it, that's a setup for frustration, for disappointment, for discouragement. Here I had this expectation of my practice being a certain way, and it's never the way I want it to be. And so people can get really discouraged because the Dharma follows its own laws and its own rhythms. And there are lots of ups and downs, in the course of our practice. You know, uh, Probably most of you know what a sine curve is, from high school math. It's going up and down and up and down and up and down. But with a sine curve, the slope of the curve can be going up even through all the ups and downs. And that's what continuity of practice does, right? The slope of our practice is in the direction of our aspiration. But within that, it's not a straight line upwards. There's times when things are flowing smoothly and times when really challenging, up and down and up and down. Aspiration will keep us going. Expectation, that'll be a certain way when we want it to be that way, that is a setup for a lot of difficulty in practice. And so I think it would be really helpful just to investigate, to explore in your own experience the difference between these two mind states, right? Aspiration, and really get a sense of what that means in your life when you have an aspiration for something of value. And really pay attention to when you're caught by an expectation. Uh, and you will see very clearly the difference. And one is onward leading, and the other is really the cause of a lot of suffering.
Yeah, thank you, Joseph. Just kept noticing my head nodding. Uh, Next time I'll travel on an airport, I'll go aspiration.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And just to highlight one little aspect of the airport experience,
Uh-huh.
expectation doesn't make sense because so many things are outside of one's control. So that's all. Just
No, I
to realize that we are not the commanding force in the universe.
oh,
And a lot of things are just outside of our control. And how can we be with that?
yeah. Uh, Thank you. And I like this inquiry that is coming in from Al and Marcia, Joseph,
Hmm.
and they ask, can you give an example of don't waste your suffering in regard to the suffering related to the comparing mind syndrome?
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely. So this is one of my favorite topics and practices. So the comparing mind in Pali, the word for that is mana, M-A-N-A. And it's usually translated as conceit. But conceit or mana, it's different than the usual connotation of conceit, feeling puffed up because we think we're better than others. Mana or conceit in the Buddhist sense means it means two things. Any kind of comparing, I'm better than, I'm worse than, I'm the same as, or it can also mean the conceit of I am, I amness over time. I was this in the past, this is what I am now, I will be this in the future. And so it's reinforcing the sense of self, the sense of I. One thing to notice about mana, this conceit, this comparing mind, or I aming over time, is that it is not uprooted until full enlightenment. So even after we understand deeply the selfless nature of things, and even after desire and aversion are uprooted from the mind on this path of awakening, conceit is still there. It's very deeply rooted in our conditioning. So knowing that suggests that we want to make friends with it because it's going to be around for quite a long time. Okay, that's all background to working with it. It's really helpful, and I do this a lot because it arises. It's going to be there. Maybe in dramatic ways if we're comparing ourselves in some heavy-handed way, of either getting puffed up or feeling depressed because we don't feel as good as other people. So it could be kind of in that heavy mode, but it can also be light little comparing, you know. Just notice what goes on in your mind when you're meeting somebody for the first time. It would just be interesting to know, are there any quick little comparing going on? Uh, so one that I see come up in my mind is just, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, but oh, I'm taller than the other person. I'm quite tall. So, it's ridiculous. But so just pay attention. Like they can be these little things, they can be big things. But what I found is that once I stopped judging myself for having conceit arise, for having this mana, this comparing mind arise, as soon as I stopped judging myself for it, in understanding, no, this is going to be here till I'm fully enlightened, then, and this is how it is now, I take delight in seeing it. I really do. Whenever this mana arises in the mind, it's like, oh, mana, I see you. Because I'd rather see it than not see it, right? So when I do see it arise, it brings about a certain delight in the fact that I'm seeing it. I'm not caught in it. And it also brings delight because knowing that it's not uprooted till full enlightenment, I think every time I see it, oh, now I'm working on full awakening. Right? So it kind of brings a lot of joy and energy in the seeing of it. So I'll just give one quick example of how I used it in my practice. A couple of years ago, I was on a self-retreat in my house, and maybe many of you know of Biko Analayo. He's this German monk, brilliant monk, and totally impeccable meditator. He's the real deal, and he lives just down the road in the Barry Center for Buddhist Studies in a little cottage. So it turns out we were both on self-retreat at the same time. And then one afternoon, I just found myself frittering away sometime. I didn't know what I was doing, but whatever it was useless activities. And then I had the thought, I'll bet Analayo's not frittering away his time because he's such an impeccable monk. So that was the thought. And then for about 5 minutes or so, I started getting down on myself. Oh, yeah, he's really doing how it's supposed to be done, and here I am just wasting a little time. And I could feel myself, really, really getting down and judging myself. But thanks to the many years of my practice, within, I don't know, 5 minutes, I recognized, oh, that's just mana. That's just the comparing mind. And as soon as I recognized it for what it was, oh, that's just mana. And understanding that this comparing mind is itself selfless, even though the content of it has an I am in it, but it is selfless as everything else is. It doesn't belong to anyone. It's just a pattern, deeply conditioned pattern that's arising. So as soon as I saw it, oh, that's just mana, the whole thing fell away. I came back to a place of ease, just continued my practice. So that's the value of really keeping an eye out for this very prevalent mind state and taking delight in the fact that we're seeing it, no longer identifying with it. So there can be a lot of joy in incorporating that into the practice.
Thank you, Joseph. I think you come in my mind when I'm like that. Now it's so helpful to know that you have other people coming in your
Right.
body too. I think
Exactly.
that's part of the practice too, that you realize, oh, I'm not the only one
Yeah,
here.
exactly. And exactly.
These phenomena keep happening. And the joy of catching it. And the
Yes.
joy of having a name for it too.
Yes. The
That
naming of it is really helpful. And
yeah.
I like using the Pali word because even with the word conceit, we could have all kinds of connotation. Even the word could kind of
Yeah.
contain a self-judgment in it. But the Pali just keeps it all impersonal. Oh, that's just mana. This also is not self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, how inspiring. Maybe one more question, Joseph, and then we'll slowly wrap up. This one is from Lisa. And Lisa writes, as I enter my mid-50s, I find myself struggling with boredom and restlessness. And that translates to not being able to focus and concentrate in my meditation. Other than noticing restlessness or boredom is here, what other advice might you have for sitting with those particular feelings in a skillful way?
Okay, so some of you of a certain age might remember the name Fritz Perls, who was the founder of Gestalt psychology, which was very big back, I don't know, in the 70s, the 60s, 70s. It was a really big thing. And he had a lot of insight, psychological insight. He said something about boredom, which I found really helpful. He said, boredom is lack of attention. It's not about what the object is. So I'll give one meditative example of this. for people who are either new to the practice or maybe in a situation, that you just described, in doing walking meditation, especially on retreat, but it could be outside of retreat also, just walking back and forth really slowly and feeling the lifting and moving and placing. To somebody who was looking at it from the outside, that would look like the most boring thing in the world. Yeah, just lift, move, place, back and forth. You know, uh, incredibly boring. But the big discovery is, and this is where Fritz Perls' comment comes in, it's only boring if there's a lack of attention. And again, going back to my description of the retreat in Nepal, be more mindful. As soon as I came in close to the experience, then the restlessness, the boredom, whatever it may be, falls away. And so when there's boredom, instead of seeing it as a problem, take it as feedback. Because what the boredom is saying is that the attention right then is not close to the object, right? Our attention is not fully on the object. So this is easily remedied, right? It's just having the intention then to feel the movement more closely, to feel it intimately. And that could be in the walking, in the sitting, it could be, okay, let me feel the sensations of the breath more carefully, right? What kind of subtleties? Can I feel the variations in the breath? Or it could be listening to a sound. If our attention is not close, maybe the sound is disturbing or annoying. But then if we just settle into the hearing and coming close to all the nuances contained within a sound, it doesn't matter what the sound, what's causing it. It could even be unpleasant, but we're engaged closely in the direct experience of it, in changes of volume, changes of pitch. In that closeness, the boredom goes away, the restlessness goes away. Um, so I think this is really the key. And I would just say if there's been a habit, of meditating with those mind states and kind of struggling with them, and um, set the intention to come in close, to feel things closely for a short period of time. Just do it for 5 minutes. So don't don't have an expectation of, okay, I'm going to be able to do this now forever. It's going to be a setup for suffering. Do it for 5 minutes. So you begin to train the mind in the quality of attention. And this actually is a key understanding in meditation, that we actually can train the mind to attend to things more carefully, more deeply, right? But not through forcing. It's through relaxing into. Um, so this is a really important question and one well worth exploring.
Yeah. Mm. Thank you, Joseph.
Yeah, pleasure.
Let's just maybe pause for a moment and just posture up if you like. And maybe take some appreciation for your deep listening and for those of you who've shared and for sharing all your enthusiasm and wisdom and suggestions, Joseph. I'll just hand it over to you to share the merit in just a moment, Joseph. But before doing so, I want to thank you all. And may today's practice and Q&R support you in your practice and in bringing life fully into the practice. And so next week, we have another great guest teacher online. Her name is Onika Mays. She will explore the Pāramī of patience. But for those local to New York, there's also this invitation at the same time and same day to go to the memorial for Susanna Wise Locos, who is CMC's founding executive director. And I've put that information in the chat, but you can also find it on our website. And for now, I just want to thank you, Joseph, for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. And for those who want to stay 15 minutes after we ring the bell, feel free to do so in the open breakouts. I want to give the final words to you.
Okay, so posture up for a couple of minutes. So we'll just sit, and it's traditional at the end of a Dharma conversation or a meditation to share the merit. So let's just sit quietly for a few moments. May the merit and good energy, wholesome energy of our practice together be dedicated to the welfare, the happiness, and the awakening of all beings everywhere. May all beings be at peace. Thank you all.